Madam President, last week, President Trump nominated Judge Brett Kavanaugh to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Now, people have begun looking over his extensive record, and he's been getting rave reviews around the country. Let's look at a few of the headlines that we've seen across the country. Here's a New York Times, July 10th. A conservative stalwart wins praise for his intellect and civility. New York Times. I mean, it's astonishing. The Wall Street Journal said that Trump's nominee will be an intellectual leader on the bench. The Detroit News said his record suggests, quote, he will maintain a commitment to interpreting the law as it is written, not how he may wish it had been crafted. Well, that's exactly what Americans should be looking for in a Supreme Court justice, because a judge's job is to apply the law, not to rewrite it. People looking at Judge Kavanaugh's record are reaching the conclusion that he knows the right way to approach this very important job. And it's not just newspapers that are saying wonderful things and singing the praise of Judge Kavanaugh. Legal scholars are lining up to commend his independence and his wisdom as a judge. Now, some of them are extremely liberal, people that he's worked with over the years. They just respect him that much as a judge who they find has been devoted to the law and the Constitution. Well, imagine that. That's what we should expect in anybody to be who serves as a justice of the Supreme Court. So there's a law professor from Yale who wrote an op-ed for the New York Times last week titled, "A Liberal's Case for Brett Kavanaugh." A liberal's case. The professor called Judge Kavanaugh, quote, a superb nominee, and said it's hard to name anyone with judicial credentials as strong as those of Judge Kavanaugh. Another liberal law professor called him a, quote, highly qualified mainstream conservative judge. He cited Judge Kavanaugh's reasoning as, quote, an example of the judging ideal, setting aside ideology and party politics and just trying to get the law right. That's a former liberal law professor. He said Judge Kavanaugh gives, quote, an independent judiciary the job it is supposed to do, interpret the law. You know, there are lawyers who appear before judges in court, and there are lawyers who appeared before Judge Kavanaugh who've said the same thing. There are surveys of these lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer, I haven't done these sorts of things, but I understand that there are surveys of lawyers who appear before judges in court, people who have won cases, people who have lost cases, but they put up their ideas of what they thought about the judge afterwards, and across the board, they call him an excellent judge. They say that he, quote, has a history of excellent legal argument and analysis. I guess we want somebody who can think intellectually, think clearly, come up with the legal argument and analysis to make the assessment, to apply the law as written. One lawyer actually said, quote, it's daunting and humbling to be in front of that brain power. It was an anonymous survey of lawyers who appeared before Judge Kavanaugh. I don't know if they won or lost, but people get to put their opinions in, winners and losers after cases. Anonymous surveys, daunting and humbling to be in front of that brain power. So it wasn't the people just trying to kiss up to the judge, win favor in a case that appear before him. These are results of people after the case. They're just telling it like it is. Excellent legal judgment, they say. So if you look beyond the courtroom, people are just as willing to talk about Judge Kavanaugh's character as a person, not just a judge, because that's part of it. I mean, you look at somebody's legal philosophy, you look at their intellect, and you look at their character when trying to assess a judge who's been nominated to say, is this person the right person to be a justice of the Supreme Court? The Washington Post even ran a piece by a woman who knows Judge Kavanaugh because he coaches her daughter's basketball team. She wrote that she was impressed by his traits of personal kindness, leadership, and willingness to help when called on. Well, there are three things that I look for in a nominee to the Supreme Court: judicial philosophy, strong intellect, solid character. So what we're hearing is overwhelming evidence from people who know him that Judge Kavanaugh has all of these qualities. He's someone who takes the law and the Constitution at face value. The Constitution is a legal document, not a living document. It was built for certainty. He knows that the judge's job is to interpret the law, not to legislate from the bench, not to make laws, not to make policy. That's what he actually said in a speech last year. got an extremely strong intellect. I just can't imagine there's anyone out there who can deny that. Daunting and humbling to be in front of that brain power. That's what one of the lawyers who appeared for him said. And he's a person of solid character. That's what we're hearing from people who've known him over the years for being extremely active in the community. The New York Times summarized it. A conservative stalwart wins praise for his intellect and civility. July 10th. So, what is there for the Democrats to come to the floor and object to? Why are they objecting to all of this? Why are some Democrats already saying they oppose a judge known for his intellect and civility? They were actually saying it, we've heard it on TV and on the floors, before he was even named by President Trump. He said, whoever President Trump names, nope, going to vote no. I mean, it's astonishing to see Democrats making that decision. Then they're asking for reams and reams of documents after they've already said they're against Judge Kavanaugh. What are they looking for? It is amazing, Madam President, because that's what the big difference is, I believe, between the Republicans and Democrats in Washington. Republican presidents choose judges and justices to follow the law. Democrat presidents seem to pick judges and justices who are guaranteed to push liberal policies and liberal agendas. Preconceived notions of how they should rule on a case before they hear the facts. They know the way they're going to go, maybe use things like emotion, sympathy, empathy. The Constitution is a legal document. Look, even though you've got legal experts from around the political world and around the spectrum on all sides of the aisle who praise his intellect and civility, not good enough for the liberal activists in this country. They don't even want to consider Judge Kavanaugh's qualifications. And they've said it here on the floor of the Senate and on television if you listen. They're already making opposition to his nomination a liberal litmus test for Democrats in this Senate. Sorry to say that more than a few Democrats seem to be playing along. We've seen Democrats in the Senate who have already said that they don't care about Judge Kavanaugh's intellect. They don't care that he is just trying to get the law right. They don't care that, as one lawyer said, it's hard to name anyone with judicial credentials as strong as those of Judge Kavanaugh. So when you have someone with these qualifications, senators ought to be looking at his record. They should look at the 300 decisions he's written in 12 years on the bench. Absolutely the right thing to look at. They should meet him, talk with him. We've just begun this confirmation hearing process. I hope that more Democrats in the Senate will have an open mind about this nominee. I hope they'll consider the kind of person we should have on the Supreme Court and then make their decisions about whether Judge Kavanaugh has those qualities. From what I've seen, he absolutely does. So I plan to continue to look into his record, listening to the people who know him best. I plan to sit down and talk with him. But everything I've seen so far, Madam President, tells me that this is someone who is exactly the kind of justice we need on the Supreme Court. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.